Yeah, even though I am currently in the middle of my video series leading up to Captain America Civil War, there is this one other little movie coming out in a couple weeks called Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And although I have said I am a bit skeptical going into that movie, I do feel I should give it its own little build-up series too. Therefore, I'm going to make a spoiler not just for Man of Steel, but also for the Dark Knight trilogy. And I know you're all going to point out that those Batman movies have absolutely no relation to anything in the DC cinematic universe. And I'm aware of that, but seeing how this is a movie called Batman v Superman, I think it would just feel really empty if I only talked about a Superman movie without talking about a single Batman movie. And if anything else, it gives me a chance to talk about one of, if not my favorite movie trilogy of all time. So let's talk about the movie that started this amazing trilogy, Batman Begins. Now, as we all know, Batman Begins was the first Batman movie that we had gotten in a very long time. The last Batman movie we had gotten was Batman and Robin, and as we all know, that movie just killed the Batman movie franchise by face fucking and taking a giant shit on everything we know and love about Batman. But Christopher Nolan, he stood up and he said, "I'll be damned if that's what everyone remembers Batman for." Okay, that may not have been quote for quote what he said, but it might as well have been. And then he proceeded to give the resurrection to the Batman franchise known as Batman Begins. So this movie essentially takes place in 3 different timelines: Bruce Wayne's childhood, Bruce Wayne a few years before he goes off to train to become Batman, and then present time Bruce Wayne. So to make this video easy, I'm just going to talk about this movie chronologically. So this movie opens up showing us Bruce falling into a well after he was playing a game of Finders Keepers with his friend Rachel Dawes. And immediately after he falls into the well, Bruce just gets attacked by a giant swarm of bats, which is the reason behind his fear of them. His father tries to comfort him about it after he gets him out of the well, and he tells him that the only reason the bats attacked him is because they were more afraid of him than he was of them. But as we all know, some fears just can't be overcome that easily. This is further shown when Bruce is at an opera with his parents and he gets spooked by some of the bats that are in production, so he asks if they can leave early. However, as they do leave early, they get confronted outside by a man named Joe Chill who tries to rob them, only to end up killing Bruce's mother and father directly in front of him. Thankfully though, the police tell Bruce later on that night that they were able to find and arrest Joe Chill. But throughout Bruce's childhood and even his whole life, he cannot help but feel responsible for the death of his parents. Because he keeps thinking to himself that had he not gotten scared, none of this would have happened. I mean, think about it. Who wouldn't feel that way? So then the movie flashes forward about 14 years later. Bruce is back home from Princeton University and his house is still managed by the family's butler, Alfred. And what I love about Alfred in this movie and throughout this trilogy is how much of a mentor and father figure he is to Bruce Wayne. He's always given Bruce advice on how he should pursue his goals, what he should do that's best for him. He really shows throughout this movie why he is known as Batman's Batman. So anyways, the real reason that Bruce is back home right now is because Joe Chill is having a court hearing to allow him early parole if he testifies against Gotham's biggest crime boss, Carmine Falcone. Rachel is now a lawyer. She takes Bruce to the hearing, but Bruce has different intentions in all this. His goal is to shoot Chill if he is granted parole in revenge for killing his parents. Chill does end up being granted parole, but out of nowhere, he ends up being killed by an undercover reporter hired by Falcone. With that, Bruce eventually decides to go confront Falcone himself, and here we see just how much power Falcone has in Gotham. He is able to sit in a bar among cops and judges without any of them even considering crossing him because of the power of fear he has instilled upon the city. With that, Bruce sees that right now there's nothing he can do, so he decides to go back outside. He gives a homeless man his jacket and all of his money and decides to go travel the world to try to find a way to fight justice. Now we get to the present time of this movie where Bruce meets a man by the name of Ducard, played by Liam Neeson. He claims to speak for a man by the name of Ra's al Ghul, the leader of the League of Shadows. Ducard tells Bruce that if he can bring this small blue flower to the top of the mountain where the League of Shadows operate, then he will give him the training he needs to fight justice. Bruce is eventually able to do so, and now we get to see Ducard train Bruce to become a ninja, and it's awesome. Just seeing him being trained in the art of ninjutsu, stealth, deception, sword fighting, being able to purge his fears. It's just really cool to see. And by the end of it all, you can truly see that the League of Shadows has made him a warrior who can engage 600 men, become invisible to his enemies, and become a legend that cannot be destroyed. But then comes the final test of his initiation. Bruce is ordered by Ducard and Ra's al Ghul to execute a criminal they have in their custody. They also reveal their intention is to have Bruce lead the League of Shadows into Gotham to destroy it. They reveal this is the most important function of the League of Shadows, to destroy civilizations and empires that are beyond saving so they can bring balance to the world. They believe Gotham's time has come and now it is time for it to die. Bruce, however, believes that destruction of a civilization is not the way to go, nor does he want to kill anyone so that he can separate himself from the criminals he faces. And with that, he decides to turn against the League. He burns their headquarters to the ground, which leads to the death of Ra's al Ghul. However, Bruce is able to save a knocked out Ducard from falling over a cliff by hoisting his unconscious body up with one hand like an absolute freaking boss. Now, after learning everything he needs to know, Bruce decides to go back to Gotham after being gone for 7 years. And here is where he tells Alfred that he intends to fight crime under a new persona. However, Alfred wisely points out to Bruce that he should be very careful about how he presents himself to the public. Because if Bruce is going to come back to Gotham after being gone for 7 years while this new masked vigilante shows up out of nowhere to start fighting crime, people will immediately suspect Bruce. So in order to avoid that, Bruce now has to take on a third alter ego in his return. And that is just that of a really shallow and stereotypical billionaire. He just has himself come off as a really irresponsible guy, who only cares about hot girls and fast cars and money, money, money. It's a really smart idea on his part, and it adds a lot to this movie. So now after fooling the public into thinking that he's just some rich douche, and after building his own Batcave base in, well, a Batcave found in his mansion, it's now time to get himself ready to fight crime. With that, he meets up with an old friend of his father's who is also the head of the Applied Science Division in Wayne Enterprises, Lucius Fox. And what I really love about the relationship between Lucius Fox and Bruce Wayne is you don't know for sure whether Lucius Fox knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman, but you suspect he does. I mean, Lucius Fox could have been all like, hey man, I know what you did last summer, now write me a check. But no, he never asks Bruce about it. He never tries to accuse him of anything. He just lets the business between them be business. And now he prepares to arm Bruce with everything he could possibly need. A batsuit that can block a knife or a bullet, a utility belt, a grappling gun, a cape that can help him glide through the sky, and of course, the Batmobile. But one moment that I really love is Alfred sees Bruce making these little bat shurikens, which I think are meant to be Christopher Nolan's answer to the Batarang, I guess. And Alfred, of course, asks why he's using bats as his symbol, to which Bruce answers that bats frighten him, and he intends to make his enemies share his dread. Smart concept, if you ask me. So now before Bruce can go after Falcone once again, he goes to speak with Gotham Police Sergeant James Gordon. He tells Bruce that if he can capture Falcone and find a judge and a district attorney who are both brave enough to prosecute him, then he can finally face justice. And one night, we finally get to see the Batman in action. He finds Falcone and a few of his thugs preparing a drug deal, and he just takes out these thugs like they're nothing. And finally, he grabs Falcone and he says to him, "I'm Batman," and just headbutts him. Funniest part though is during it all, he runs into the homeless man from earlier in the movie and he addresses the nice coat he gave him. I don't know, I laughed anyway. So after Batman persuades Rachel to take the case to prosecute Falcone, it looks like Falcone is finally gonna face justice. However, Falcone is eventually able to rendezvous with his business partner, Dr. Jonathan Crane. Falcone threatens to tell the public about Crane's illegal hallucination drugs that he's been performing on criminals unless he declares Falcone is mentally unfit for trial. With that, Crane decides to make it a legit story by putting on his scarecrow mask and exposing Falcone to his fear gas. This causes Falcone to just start flipping shit, and Crane declares that Falcone needs to be transported to the Arkham Asylum so that he can run some more tests. Batman soon eventually confronts Scarecrow to what the overall collaboration is between him and Falcone, to which the Scarecrow then exposes Batman to this fear gas, which now has him starting to panic. Batman, however, is able to overcome it from an antidote that Lucius Fox has developed. Batman then goes to confront Crane once again, who infects him with his own gas just after Crane had used the gas to infect Rachel. Through this, Crane reveals not only is he dumping his toxin into the city's water supply, but also that he is working for Ra's al Ghul. Thankfully, Batman and James Gordon are both able to save Rachel from the toxin, but Batman and we as the audience are still sitting there thinking, wait a minute, Ra's al Ghul is dead. But then at Bruce's birthday party, we hear someone approach him and say, but is Ra's al Ghul immortal? And from there we see that Ducard is in fact the real Ra's al Ghul, which leaves you thinking when you realize it, oh my gosh, how did I miss that earlier? Because you stop and you think about it and you see that Ducard completely fits every trait that Ra's al Ghul has, which leaves you feeling like an idiot that you didn't pick up on that earlier. I love when a movie can do that to us. So now that Ra's al Ghul and the rest of the League of Shadows have arrived, he reveals their plan to destroy Gotham. They intend to use a really powerful microwave emitter to vaporize Gotham's water supply, which will release Crane's fear toxin among the entire city. So from there, the people of Gotham can tear the city apart through their own fear. Not on Batman's watch. So just after revealing to Rachel that he is Batman, Bruce then leaves to stop the League of Shadows. He's able to take out most of these guys, but now he has to stop Ra's al Ghul from activating the microwave emitter. The two of them throw down and it makes for a really good fight in seeing the student-teacher conflict between the two of them. And while Ra's points out to Bruce that he cannot stop the emitter or the train, Gordon uses the Batmobile to shoot down the rest of the train tracks so it cannot reach the water supply. Bruce then escapes the train before it crashes, leaving Ra's al Ghul to die. After all this occurs, James Gordon is now made a lieutenant in Gotham Police. Bruce is finally given control over Wayne Enterprises. And Rachel tells Bruce that even though she loves him, they cannot be together until Gotham no longer needs Batman. Then we get to the final scene in this movie where Gordon summons Batman through the bat signal to tell him about a new criminal they need to take down. He shows Batman the only piece of evidence that they found, which is a Joker playing card. To which Batman just says, I'll look into it. Which now had everyone super excited when they heard it to now know that in the next movie we were getting the Joker. That would soon lead to one of the greatest movies in the history of mankind. But that's a video for another day. So all in all, Batman Begins is an awesome movie. The casting in this movie is damn near perfect. Christian Bale is absolutely fantastic as both Bruce Wayne and Batman. Liam Neeson was incredible as Ra's al Ghul. Gary Oldman kills it as James Gordon. Michael Caine was amazing as Alfred. He portrayed him exactly as I felt he should be. I love Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox. I love Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow. Katie Holmes, I will say, isn't amazing as Rachel Dawes, but she does what she needs to do to get the job done. The story is awesome. I loved seeing how it focused on the origins of Batman. What happened to his parents, why he's afraid of bats, seeing the training that he underwent to become the biggest badass of all time, that is the Batman. The action sequences and the fight scenes in this movie are so thrilling. I love how they made this movie feel kind of like a realistic comic book movie. I feel like that added a lot to it. In the end, Christopher Nolan came into this movie as a director that not many of us had maybe heard much about. And this movie proved to be the start of him solidifying himself as one of the best directors in the business by resurrecting the Batman movie franchise into something we could all love and be excited for once again. So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time.